Greetings, everyone. This is Lenny Mana-Hoppenworth, and we are live streaming from Indivisible Illinois Facebook page. We are also here on Zoom. I'm very excited for this conversation today. We are still reeling from the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We had a great rally downtown on Saturday, and then we heard the news about Breonna Taylor, and we are not okay. We are not okay. So we know that what we have to do, though, we have to get up from our puddle that we're in, and we need to get going. That's what this call is all about. It's all about what can grassroots do at this time. I'm so grateful that it's the day before my birthday. Me as a Libra wanting to put things, in balance again. We know what we have to do. I'm glad that my daughter, who's 16, has stepped up to sign up to be a poll worker. I understand that in Chicago we're doing okay filling those spaces. It is a national holiday. It's a state holiday this year in November 3rd in Illinois. So high schoolers like my daughter, who's 16, are able to be poll workers and poll observers. And tomorrow is the last day to sign up for that. So please do reach out to your election authority to find out how you can get your teen involved. I'm excited to introduce the moderator of the call tonight, my friend Ben Joravsky, who's been a political writer in Chicago, a force to be reckoned for many decades. We work together at the Chicago Reader, me on the sales side, him on the writing and the podcast side, Ben Joravsky Show. So I'm very grateful for him to be here. We also have my friend Dani, who we met a couple years ago in Chicago. I met a couple years ago in Chicago. And at that time we were just talking, she being from in the LaSalle County Democrats, talking about what we can do moving forward post this administration, and learning together. And I find out that she is actually running for Congress. So excited to see people stepping up into leadership roles in their own community. So I'm very excited to hear from her. We've also got our Indivisible group from the 16th district, Sarah Bingaman, who leads ABT Sauk Valley, who has endorsed Dani for Congress. I'm wearing my Marie Newman button today, who's another endorsed candidate of ours in Illinois' 3rd district. I would love to see them together in DC, along with our very own Lauren Underwood, which I know a lot of you helped to get out the vote for and get into office. We're also going to hear from Wisconsin Dems Heba Mohammad, and also Rose Colacino, who's been working to secure our vote for many years now. And she's also going to give us an update on vote by mail. So at this time, I would love to pass the mic to Ben Joravsky. And Ben, you're on mute.
Now am I think that's never been a problem in my life to be muted, but I believe I'm unmuted now. Is that correct, Lenny? All right, before I get started, I want to give a shout out to my wife. She's the one who set up the Zoom thing. I'm not that familiar with Zoom. I try to stay away from Zoom. This is how much I believe in helping Dani B get elected in the 16th congressional. Let me say this. I'm political reporter from the Chicago Reader, but over the last, it's like one side is right. There's like two sides of the story where I see the country heading right now with the Republican Party. In my humble opinion, and I will argue this point anywhere, in any place, is disastrous. And I don't see anybody in the Republican Party take a decisive stand against Donald John Trump and where he's leading this country. I see it time after time. They withdraw, they resign rather than confront Trump, rather than confront all the hatred that he's bringing out. And so I just figure that old school, Adam Kinzinger's got a good point. doesn't cut it anymore when you're not taking a stand against somebody who's leading us, in my humble opinion, toward fascism. So I said it, I believe it. And so that's why I participate in groups like this and have people like Dani come on my podcast and talk about what she's up to. So with that as a preamble, I want to introduce Dani B. I call her Dani B, in part because I stumble on her last name. She knows it. And she's probably thinking, who is Ben Joravsky to call me Dani B and make fun of my last name? But Dani, we all have our issues when it comes to seeing names spelled out. So I've just been so comfortable calling you Dani B. I hope you will forgive me for constantly calling you Dani B. Do you do that?
I absolutely humbly accept Dani B. I appreciate the level of familiarity that it demonstrates.
Well, we're pretty familiar. You've been on my show at least 3 times. You were on today for a 4th time. I've lost track. You've told your story several times on my show, and I'm going to ask you to tell it again, just in case people didn't hear it, because it's a pretty compelling story. Also want to shout out to Sarah Bingaman. Sarah, if you're there, just let us know that you're there. I'm going to bring you on in a little bit after Dani is
here.
Okay, there you go. Okay, excellent. Just to make sure that you're here. Sarah is very active in the Indivisible group in the 16th Congressional District, so she could talk about the efforts going on and trying to convert a district that has traditionally voted Republican to vote Democrat. It's a big challenge for Dani B and the Democrats, but this could be the year. So Dani, why don't you start by introducing yourself a little bit? No, better yet, start by telling folks, this is what I always ask you to do whenever Dani comes to my show. Dani, tell them the 16th Congressional District, where it is, what towns it encompasses, and that kind of thing.
Sure. So district is a big one. It is just west of the Chicago suburbs, and it was designed, if you can kind of imagine for a minute the kind of layout of the suburbs, this district was really designed to kind of cup the Chicago suburbs. It includes Rockford, so Wisconsin border, Rockford, Belvedere, Roscoe, that kind of neck of the woods, sweeps down through DeKalb County, LaSalle, Bureau, and Putnam counties in the corner, and it actually touches the Indiana border. So it touches both the Wisconsin and the Indiana borders. Includes a little chunk of southwestern Will County, which you all probably know is one of the collar counties, and is in fact the last remaining Republican-held district in northern Illinois.
And the incumbent is Adam Kinzinger. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's right. So Kinzinger has been in office for 10 years. The district, they say, was drawn for Republican, in fact, drawn for Adam Kinzinger. And what I always share is that 10 years is a long time. 10 years is a long time for anybody. It is a particularly long time if you think about where this country was 10 years ago. Think about where each and every one of us was a decade ago. And what we've seen in this district is some pretty remarkable changes over the course of the past 10 years that put Democrats in general in a much better position now than we were a decade ago, and put this campaign in exactly the kind of position it needed to be at the outset to build a really aggressive grassroots ground game. Get out there in front of, right now we're talking to 7,000 voters a week. We're making 7,000 voter calls every single week. And that's the kind of foundation we needed to be able to build on. And we've seen just a tremendous groundswell of support here in the district from voters and from grassroots volunteers and donors all across the country.
And now tell people about yourself.
Sure. So Dani Brzozowski, and my family has been here in the middle of this big district since the late 90s when I was a young teenager. So my dad was in the Army for 25 years. He's a Gulf War veteran. And we moved to LaSalle County when he was put on recruiting duty. And I did the thing that I think many of us do when we are in unfamiliar circumstances. And I looked for the similarities. And there weren't a ton of them, right? This town of 10,000 people in the middle of rural Illinois and the Army bases all over the world on which I'd grown up. But what I did find was that the strongest thread of commonality was in the sense of community. And that sense of community is something that as a kid, I sort of assumed was unique to the military and understood to be really, really important to my family. It became increasingly important to me as I got older. And when we moved to this place, rural Illinois, for the first time in a civilian community for any significant length of time, I found that sense of community was important to everybody. And that's really been the driving force behind my entire career. So I worked in nonprofits, mostly in education and literacy, a handful of them in Chicago, served on a number of civic and philanthropic boards. I owned a small business in my hometown that was a community center, and decided to run for Congress because I grew up poor. My family was one of those military families who subsist on food stamps. We lived in trailers in Texas, and when we first came to Illinois, had a rental property, a house, but we couldn't afford to heat it, and so we all five slept together in the living room all winter long. And as I built a career out of helping other people and trying to lift my community up, I saw that not only were the things that were difficult for my family not particularly unique, but for far too many families, the things that had been hard for us were getting harder, not easier. And as I got steadily more invested in politics, as Lenny suggests, I'm the chair of the LaSalle County Democratic Party and have been for a couple of terms. I watched really, really closely the behavior of our representative, my now opponent, Adam Kinzinger. And what I saw was someone who votes time and time and time again in the interest of making it harder for working families to get by. Kinzinger has put us all in, frankly, a really terrible position, and he has done it without remorse and without the kind of competent, compassionate leadership that the people in this district are really hungry for. And so I decided to run to give us all the kind of fighting chance we deserve and the kind of representation who's going to make sure we get it.
All right. You're talking about the way he votes and how it makes things harder for residents in the district. Get a little more specific. What particular types of votes and what particular types of issues are forces and factors in this election?
Yeah, so, I think he's been in Congress for 10 years, right? And so he's got a lengthy voting record of choosing the interests largely of his corporate donors over the interests of the people of this district. I'll point to a handful of things that are particularly egregious and really stand out because I hear from the voters literally every single day the things that they're worried about, the reasons they're suffering and struggling. This is a district where our unemployment rate is persistently higher than the national average. In fact, at some points during the pandemic, our unemployment rate in Illinois 16 has been around 50% higher than the national average. We have areas of this district, pockets of the district, that still have unemployment around 30%, which is just a staggering number. Adam Kinzinger has voted to strip healthcare away from people with pre-existing conditions 54 times, voted against capping prescription drug costs. Adam Kinzinger takes 95% of his campaign donations from ultra-wealthy conservative donors and corporate PACs. And so when you look at something like capping prescription drug costs, right? And we all know that the rising cost of prescription drugs is a deep concern for people of this country, right? We all know somebody who has foregone a prescription. Millions of people in the United States of America, in fact, we know have foregone a prescription because they have to make critical choices between their health and putting food on the table. The rising cost of prescription drugs keeps people up at night in this country. And so for Adam Kinzinger to vote against capping prescription drug costs it just doesn't make sense, right? And then you look at his war chest. He's sitting on millions of dollars, and 300,000 of those dollars come from big pharma. Kinzinger is bought by big pharma and corporations like big pharma, and the people of this district deserve better, and we're going to give it to them.
Another issue, of course, the big issue is the presence of Donald Trump in my neck of the woods. Donald Trump's a dirty word, obviously, and anybody who's had any affiliation, association with him is in political trouble, a political hot water, to put it mildly. You're running in a district that actually went for Donald Trump in 2016. So how are you dealing with Trump as a factor and a force in this election?
Yeah, so I think it's a couple of things. And I think today, a lot of us are probably feeling a little bit differently about this, even than we might have been at this time yesterday. President Trump's comments late yesterday, about the, sort of peaceful transition of power and his unwillingness to engage in our electoral process, or even to sort of demonstrate some very basic faith in that electoral process, is, I think, really, really concerning. But let's sort of set that issue aside for the moment. I think overall, what I say is this: I'm not running against President Trump. So I think that's important. I am running against Adam Kinzinger, and Adam Kinzinger is somebody who votes with the president 93% of the time, which I think is a critical statistic to bear in mind, because Adam Kinzinger is often on TV and he shouts bipartisanship and he says, I'm the lone rational moderate member of Congress left, and it's a lie. It's just patent lies over and over and over again. Here's what I will say about President Trump. This is a district where people are struggling, people are suffering. And this isn't brand new, right? Manufacturing jobs have been lost over and over and over for a number of years. We lost 13,000 manufacturing jobs in the state of Illinois in 2019. That is a lot of jobs. And we see the effect in corners of this district, and it's heartbreaking, right? We saw in Mendota, a town 10 miles north of where I live, Del Monte just shut down, 600 jobs lost, literally overnight. That is so many families' livelihoods. It's the livelihood of almost the entire town. We see people who are facing these really, really difficult circumstances. And what I hear from these people, what I understand from these people whom I talk to day in and day out, is that they feel like there is a political system that works against us, not for us. And they feel that way because we have a political system that works against us, not for us. We have an economy and a political dichotomy that pits the interests of corporations and their wealthy CEOs against the interests of the working people who prop up their profits. And that is the baseline. That is the foundation for everything in this country, for all of the systems that people feel like they are up against when they're just trying to get by, just trying to make a living. And what I think Donald Trump's, what won Donald Trump this district and districts like it in 2016, and I, first of all, don't want to suggest that racism isn't a factor here, that misogyny isn't a factor here. Those things are real, they are issues, they exist in this district. I see them, I experience some of them. Those things exist. But I think that the biggest factor in Trump's election here in 2016 was this idea that the political system works against us, not for us. And Trump's ability to sort of get at that concept, his ability to speak to those people, to say, you're right, the system has screwed you, the system does not work for you, and I'm Donald Trump and I'm not part of the system. Now, Adam Kinzinger is another thing entirely, because Adam Kinzinger is he is the poster child for corporate establishment republicanism, right? That is who Adam Kinzinger is through and through. It's how he votes, it's how he's funded, it's everything about him. And so I think in that way, the two of them differ. And in the same way that President Trump, though the effort was wholly insincere, and certainly he hasn't kept his promises to working class families, he did at least make an effort to speak directly to working families in districts like this one. And that sort of the delta there is where I think this campaign has been so tremendously successful, because I too speak to the interests of working families, albeit significantly more sincerely than President Trump ever has or will.
So what's a specific message you could deliver to a voter in the 16th congressional district that to assure him or her that voting for you will make a meaningful difference in their life, that you will address something that's of a concern to them, something real and substantive as opposed to the rhetoric of Donald Trump?
Yeah, so I think it's a couple of things. So I think it's two things, and you have to do them both at the same time. And one is policy. And so the specific policies that we're talking about are job creation in the form of infrastructure spending, which creates millions of jobs, repairs our crumbling roads, bridges, and waterways, expands access to broadband internet, creates critical health and education infrastructure. So it's things like creating jobs, increasing wages, increasing access to healthcare, education, and childcare, right? So just those values in and of themselves, right? And how we create legislation, how we pass legislation in the interest of supporting those things. But I think the other thing, and I find this tactic to be particularly effective when talking to people whose political ideology differs from my own, and that's talking about the problems we face. So here's the thing. I spend a lot of time talking to strong Republican voters, right? I spend more time probably than you would imagine talking to people whose opinions are much different than my own. And we always have these really rich, productive conversations. And I think what's so effective about that accessibility, right? That level of transparency and that sort of authenticity. I think what's so effective in those encounters is people understand, regardless of where they fall on the ideological spectrum, regardless of, how we differ in the way we come at solutions to our problems, right? Number one, we agree on what those problems are, which is absolutely not something we can say of Adam Kinzinger. He has no idea what kind of problems the people in this district face. And if he does, he's ignoring them, and he's been ignoring them for a decade. But number two, and I think what's more than that, I think people have conversations with me and they understand this, what you're all probably perceiving to be over earnestness. This is sincerity, right? This is me genuinely. I get worked up about this stuff because we are talking about the lives and livelihoods of my friends, family, and neighbors. And I am not running for Congress because it's super fun. I'm running for Congress because we need better representation. And when I talk to voters, regardless of where they fall on the ideological spectrum, they recognize that that sincerity isn't something you can fake, that I'm going to go to Congress and I'm going to do what in my heart of hearts I believe is in their best interest, period, full stop, that's it. They think they can trust me. They think they can trust me because they can. They know that I am going to advocate for their best interests 100% of the time.
All right, Dani B, I'm about to bring Sarah on to get a little more specific about what can be done to win an election. But before I do, I want to make a point and get your response that I also made when I was interviewing on the podcast today. Much of what you have to say and the way you say it really reminds me of my interviews with Lauren Underwood back in 2018 when she was running, and nobody expected her to win either. I remember actually when that campaign started, all the experts, I forget the name of that group, Lenny will help me out with it, but they tell people where to invest their money. They'll go to Lauren. That won't be a wise expenditure. And they were sending everybody to the 6th congressional district. Oh, that's where your money can be. And we won the 6th too. The Dems won the 6th, but they also won Lauren Underwood. So talk about the similarities in your opinion between your campaign and Lauren's campaign.
Yeah, so I love these comparisons. I find them so tremendously flattering. Lauren has become a really good friend personally, as well as a friend to the campaign. Lauren, actually, her encouragement, Congresswoman Underwood's encouragement for me to get in this race was kind of the catalyst. That was kind of the tipping point when I decided that I was going to do it. And part of the reason her vote of confidence was so powerful to me is because the demographics of our districts, not dissimilar. The sort of partisan lean, perceived partisan lean of this district at the outset of our race and Congresswoman Underwood's at the outset of her race, very, very similar. I think you're right, Ben, to point to this sort of this idea that these were sort of long shot races, that were dark horses. I think that there is something really appealing for me about that kind of narrative. And I think part of it is knowing how successful Lauren was able to be in the 14th. Like I said, this district is the last remaining Republican district in Northern Illinois. And it's been so valuable for me to have the support of people like Lauren Underwood and Sean Casten, and to look at their success, their ability to mobilize and to organize voters in 2018, the last cycle, and to see the way people responded to that level of grassroots organizing. This is the perfect segue because what Sarah Bingaman's group, ABT, has been able to do is so very similar to what Lauren Underwood and Sean Casten's campaigns were able to do. Catalyze these groups of progressive activists who are willing to get out there and in 2018, knock doors, right? Do those in-person events. And this cycle, we're doing so many other sort of creative things that I'll let Sarah talk about. But for me, it's really gratifying. It's really inspiring to have watched the Underwood campaign and the Casten campaign last cycle, to have seen their successes and to know that we can replicate that same strategy in the 16th this cycle.
All right, very good. With that, Dani, thank you very much. And I'm going to bring Sarah on, Sarah Bingaman, to get a little more specific about the campaign itself. Sarah, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Thank you very much. I know that this week has been really, really hard for many of us, particularly since last Friday night. And our group in particular, it's been extremely hard because we lost one of our very own at the same time as we lost Ruth. However, today was a very critical day because it was the day that people began to vote in the state of Illinois, and we saw lines everywhere. And I could feel it. I could feel people going into that polling place and getting their little black pen and marking that mark right next to Dani's name. It was so exciting to think about that actually happening after all of this time we have been waiting. So I think we need to celebrate that this day is extremely exciting. It was wonderful to see lines almost everywhere, that people are very, very anxious to vote. So I know I just have to start with that. So our group is an indivisible group. We're called Action for a Better Tomorrow Sauk Valley because we actually pulled together a little bit before Indivisible existed. And I am very proud to say that I think we were either the first or among the very first to endorse Dani for Congress in the 16th Congressional District. And she has gotten many, many wonderful endorsements, but we were right out there at the beginning, and we could see how great Dani was right away. And we wanted to give her that endorsement because we hoped that that would bring some additional support for her and some additional recognition. And our process for that was very clear. When we formed as a group, of course, the first few weeks, this was back in November of 16, all we did was cry and mope and whine, and we decided that really wasn't going to be a very effective way to be a group. So we decided that we needed to have a mission statement, and we formed our mission statement, which is to support candidates who share our progressive American values, and look for those candidates and support them in any way that we can. And then we had to say, what are those progressive values? And we had to list those and make those very, very clear and on paper, so that when we were meeting with candidates, when we were looking at people, we could say, does this person match up? Well, you couldn't find anyone who matches up better to that list than Dani. So it was in many ways easy to say, yes, she's the candidate we have been looking for here in the 16th. We will do everything we can to help her get elected. It's difficult. No one needs to tell anyone on this call how difficult it is, because we can't do anything the way we've done it in the past. But Dani's team is extremely creative and extremely hardworking and extremely supportive. And I have to give a shout out to the Indivisible team and how supportive they have been of our group, because we kind of sit out here in this little area of very, very red Illinois. When we formed, we thought, oh my gosh, maybe there are 10 of us, maybe there are 20 there, and quickly we were 500. So when we wear our buttons and we wear our attire, people come up to us still and say, oh my gosh, there are progressives out here. they're still surprised. So there was a real need for a progressive organization when we came together, and we had a really, really strong need for a good progressive candidate, and we found that in Dani. So what have we been doing? Of course, Dani's campaign, when you can't have parties and when you can't do events the way you normally do, you fall to phone banking. And so our group has been phone banking, and Dani has been great about finding all different kinds of sources to do phone banking for her. We've been writing postcards. Of course, that's one of the most popular things going on this election cycle. Postcards are the it thing to do, it seems. And so we are doing postcards for Dani and for a variety of other organizations as well. We've been working lately, in fact, this afternoon and for the last several weeks, getting lots and lots of signs out. Adam's signs look old and tattered, just like Adam is looking. And of course, we just call him out here Absentee Adam, because he just never shows up. He never shows up. He hasn't done a public town hall in years and years and years. He is deathly afraid of someone like me, a grandmother, a retired elementary school teacher, asking him a question. I've never seen anyone so terrified of facing questions because he can't respond to them. And you can hear how Dani responds to anything. She's just so open, and we can ask her anything, and there it is. So we've been putting lots of signs out because we need to get that name recognition out. We have billboards up. We're getting some flashback, I will tell you, and we've had lots and lots and lots of signs stolen out here. That's the very creative way the opposite side works. They steal signs. Isn't that a wonderful creative thing to do? And now just defaced one of our Dani billboards. But that was put back together, and we got some good press from the media today for that. So you get what you get. Of course, we're taking out her literature, anything we can think of to do to make sure that her face and her name and her story are out there for the community. She's been doing a very creative thing, and I saw her there today, going on a park tour. So she's been visiting various parks throughout the district. Today she was at Meadows Park, a really fun place in Dixon, Illinois, with a brand new splash pad, and the kids were running around in the splash pad because it was a beautiful day. And there was Dani. And then, 2 weeks ago or so, she was at our riverfront, right under the Reagan on horseback statue, meeting with lots of people. So the park tours, I think, have been very helpful, a way for people to see her and see how genuine she is. So those are some of the things that we have been working on, and we're, as I hope you can tell, we're very, very excited. We're very hopeful. We're very optimistic. We think that we can pull this out. If you had been with me today when people were coming in and asking for signs, and a volunteer was there, and she was doing something else. She was stuffing envelopes. And when she was ready to leave, she said, "I cannot believe the energy that is in this room." So that's a good thing. That's what you want to see during a campaign.
Sarah, I want to ask you, what's like the top things that you would like to get in terms of assistance from people who aren't in the 16th congressional district, people who may be listening to you right now? What's your wish list?
Oh, we have such a long one. We really would love some help with phone banking. We've been phone banking on Wednesday nights from 6 to 8, but there are lots of phone banking opportunities. And when I've been on those calls, of course, you're leaving messages, and that's fine because that's still getting her name out there. But I will tell you a story about my 92-year-old strong Republican woman that I got in touch with by phone. And when you see strong Republican in 92, it's not a phone call that you might be anxious to be making. And she said, "Is she a Democrat or a Republican?" And I said, "She's a Democrat, and she's running against Adam Kinzinger." And she said, "I can't stand Adam Kinzinger. And I have just written him 2 letters, and he's got to stop sending me the stupid stuff that he sends me about abortion. I have no interest in reading this stuff." And so that was really a fun phone call. Those make your night. So phone banking, yes. Postcard writing. I'm going to be running some postcards into Lombard tomorrow for Dani, and I have another stack in my car, so I'll be in Lombard bringing postcards if anybody wants some of those. And then I'm going to be stopping in DeKalb on my way back. So postcard writing, come out and see us. I know that this seems far when you live in the city. I taught in Oak Park for 30 years, so I'm not a stranger to what it's like to live in the suburbs and be near the city. But it's beautiful out here. I mean, today was a gorgeous day, and she's doing this great park tour. She's visiting people in some of the most beautiful places in the 16th congressional district. So come on out. It's really nice to be out here. We have one of the things that's so frustrating about Kinzinger, I mean, one of the 10,000, is that he has no appreciation for the tremendous environmental resources that we have out here. We have so many state parks, and we have the beautiful Rock River that runs through here. And we have just everywhere you look, just gorgeous views and gorgeous scenery, and lots of prairie gardens, and lots of people and lots of artistic communities. And he, of course, knows none of that because he never comes to see any of it. So come on out. And when she's doing her park tour, come out and see how beautiful it is out here. You'll be surprised. When people come to Dixon, they walk into the town and they say, "Wow,
All right.
Really a cool town. So yeah, join us.
A particular specific link that you can provide. I keep seeing messages flash on the board. People want to know when you refer to the post-writing campaign or maybe volunteering. Is there a particular link you could give? Folks
Yes, and I can put those in, but what I'm going to do is refer you to Dani's team for that, because she really has this incredible team in Marguerite and Dave and Nick, and they will get everything to you. If I get in the middle of that, then I'm just a third party, and I'm going to slow down the process. So I will put in those contacts in the message, but very easy. They're all their name and DaniForIllinois.com. So I will put that in.
All right, very good. Thank you so much, Sarah. We're going to switch to Wisconsin from the 16th Congressional District. And I'm hoping at least Rose is with me, or Heba, either one of you on the line right now, Rose Colacino or Heba Mohammad? No?
I am going to defer to the expert, who is Heba. All yours, Heba.
Is Heba there?
I am here, yes.
The great Heba Mohammad. All right, I've been talking to you on the phone and sending you emails, and you're very active with the Democrats in Wisconsin. So why don't you talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges the Democrats are facing in Wisconsin, and how can people in Illinois help you out?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. As always, really happy to be here and to be talking about Wisconsin 40 days out from the election. We're getting down to it, and we are going to need all hands on deck. I know many hands have already been there, but now is the time to bring in all of your friends, your family members, and to let them know that this is urgent. We need to get this done. Wisconsin, as many of you know, is going to be a key pivotal state in this election. Prior to this, I've been saying that Wisconsin is one of the most important states. I'm just going to come out and say it's going to be the most important state. And I think everyone on this call knows that. Our 10 electoral college votes are going to make the difference in how we are winning or losing at the presidential level. But as many of you also know, we have some local battles to be fought, including in our Save the Veto program, where we are trying to prevent a Republican supermajority from taking over our state legislature. If we were to lose the governor's ability to veto Republican bills, or to have his veto overturned rather, we will lose our ability to pass any progressive legislation to make sure that we are representing our constituents properly, because they are going to gerrymander the state again, the same way that they did after 2010. And it's put us in a position where, we've won over 50% of the vote in recent elections and gotten about a third of the seats out of that. So that's not fair at a very basic level, but it's also becoming increasingly dangerous to make sure that we are representing voices adequately so that people are being protected, that policies are being passed that actually support our neighbors and our families, and that we are doing the best that we can for our communities in general. So what does that mean for us right now? That means that we need to be making phone calls to voters. We need to be reaching them. We have several different conversations happening right now, including to voters who might still be on the fence. But importantly, we've been voting in Wisconsin for a week now. If folks had requested their absentee ballots, they have started to receive them. Several thousands of people have already returned them, which is really great news. But it also encourages us to start reaching out to these voters ASAP, because they're making decisions now about who they are supporting. And joining us for our phone banks gives you the opportunity to talk to these voters to make sure that they are voting for Joe Biden and all of the local Democrats. And also, extremely importantly, and my colleague Alexis always does a fantastic job talking about this, but making sure that voters who are voting absentee know how to fill out their ballots. As long as they follow the 3 steps of having a witness, filling it out, putting it in the envelope, and then signing it as the voter and having their witness both sign and add their address, we will be in a good place. So those are the conversations that we're leaning into right now to make sure voters know what they need to do. And all of these phone calls help with that. I'll share an anecdote, which is one of my very good friends called me frantically yesterday saying, I just got a text message from the WIS Dems, and I learned that I filled out my ballot incorrectly. I did not have my witness put her address on there. So we triaged, we called the clerk, we figured it out. But and the point I'm trying to make is every single conversation matters, including to our own networks. So that was a lesson for me to make sure I'm checking in with all of my friends and my neighbors. But I think, again, it just underscores that every conversation can be the difference between getting a vote successfully in the door and making sure that everyone's voices are heard this election. So we have several phone banks coming up. Every weekend is a weekend of action for us. Our team also does Tuesday and Thursday evening phone banks. We will make sure to share those links. If you are a first-time phone banker, we will have training. We will make sure that you feel comfortable and that you know the rules so that as you're talking to voters, you're giving them the right information. So I hope to see you all soon. I will pause there and see if there are questions, but I'm really glad for this opportunity to chat with you all.
Heba, I have a question for you right off the bat. What are the sort of the general points that you want phone bankers to make when they're talking to voters in Wisconsin?
Yeah, so general points are to make sure that we're always making sure that folks know who they're voting for and having conversations with them about Democrats. If they are undecided, to really lean into why Democrats are going to be the best folks to represent us at the local level and at the federal level as well. If they are Democrats, we're also having conversations about voting methods. A lot of people are voting by mail, but some people may decide not to. And no matter what they decide, we want to make sure that they have the correct information. So if they are voting by mail, our script goes by step to tell them exactly what they need to do. If they want to vote early in person, we have that information. If they want to vote on election day, we also have that information. And we're also emphasizing voter registration deadlines for people who do need to re-register. So all of this is packaged into the script. Again, we make sure that our volunteers are prepped to know exactly what they need to be talking about and feel comfortable with our tools so that it is, in a lot of cases, this might be the only time we talk to voters, is that one connection that we make. So we pack it all into that conversation, give them the voter assistance hotline, and really make sure that we're having a solid interaction with them so that they can vote properly.
Are you finding that most of these conversations with voters are in the category of trying to convince a swing voter to vote Democrat, or is it more trying to rally a disillusioned Democratic voter into actually voting?
I wouldn't say either of those really. We have talked to a greater universe than we did in 2016. So it's been a different mix. In 2016, we talked primarily to supporters. We've expanded that and we've been doing that all year. And so at this point, we've really cleaned up our data. We know who we need to be talking to in these last 40 days to turn them out. But we also know that even if you're not necessarily a strong Democratic supporter, we're not just talking to you for this election. We're talking to you for the next 10 years to make sure that you feel heard. And so when we do, again, have those opportunities to talk to people, this election is front of mind, but so is what happens after November 4th, November 3rd, November 3rd and beyond that. So yeah, it's been a mix of a lot of people, but I think our volunteers and a lot of folks who've been on this call have spoken to this, feel really good about the strategy that we have in Wisconsin to build our long-term progressive fabric. And
one of the concerns I get from a lot of people in Illinois, when they think about Wisconsin, is how to protect the vote in Wisconsin. There's all this concern in Illinois, somehow or other, it's out of our control. They don't trust the Republicans in that state, particularly the Republican legislators who've tried to pass laws to undercut the Democratic governor who have passed laws to do that. So how do you protect the vote in Wisconsin?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are very fortunate to have a strong voter protection team that really knows the ins and outs of our voting laws in Wisconsin. They've done a lot of work to protect and also to expand our democratic principles and access to the ballot. What we are doing right now, we've stood up a voter protection and voter assistance hotline for our April primary this year. That's the earliest that we've ever opened our voter assistance hotline, and it has been used since April and continues to be used now. We get a lot of phone calls from people who need support requesting ballots, maybe registering to vote, and just need that additional information that maybe our phone banking volunteers don't know the nitty-gritty, but these folks do. And so being able to direct voters to an adequate and really well-informed resource has been incredible. The other piece here is, we will have poll observers on election day itself, folks who can make sure that the rules are being followed, and if a voter is being challenged, that they can report that to our team so that we can follow up as needed. A lot of our friends in Illinois have volunteered to be those poll observers. That has been done on a totally volunteer basis, and we're so grateful that folks are willing to make that journey to help us out. You do not have to be a Wisconsin resident to be a poll observer. So that's been really positive and helpful for our efforts. And I want to say a big thank you to our neighbors in Illinois for stepping up in that way.
Yeah, everybody's pretty much awake in this election. But I think people were sleeping back in 2016, not only in Wisconsin, I'm just going to drop it on Wisconsin, but people were sleeping in Illinois as well. And I'll tell you right now, I know so many anxiety-ridden, anxious Democrats with so much energy that they want to channel and put into something kind of positive thing as opposed to just shrieking at each other, pulling their hair out. So just the notion of being a poll observer, we call poll watchers in Illinois, but whatever. Poll observer is a good, I think is a good channel. What are some of the legislative races, aside from just getting a Democratic vote out in Wisconsin, you want to talk about that folks in Illinois should know about, important either congressional races, state rep races, state senator races, etc.?
Sorry, I'm a bit slow to unmute here. So we do have a number of important races. I think rather than go through them all and sort of highlight all of them, I would encourage people to visit savetheveto.com. That's where we have a lot of information about our state Senate and state assembly races. Some that I know have been really popular amongst, again, our neighbors in Illinois. We have Patty Shockner's seat. She's running for state Senate. Again, she's an incumbent. We definitely want to make sure that we're protecting her seat. Representative Robin Vining in the Waukesha area. I know a lot of folks in Illinois know her, and she's been on some calls with our different partners in Illinois as well. So I'll just highlight those two, but we do have a number of incredible candidates who need support all across the board. And again, that website is savetheveto.com, and we'll give you a lot of opportunities to get involved with those races directly.
All right, very good. Thank you so much, Heba, for participating. I want to bring Rose on. Rose, are you still there? Rose.
I am still here. Also slow to the unmute button with my friend
All
Heba.
right. We'll close with you, Rose. And why don't you tell anybody listening what they can do, how they can sign up, get involved, and what you will dispatch them to do. I know you've been very active in the effort to help the Democrats in Wisconsin for a while. So give folks a sense of how they can get involved.
That's right. I want to do a shout out, first of all, before I get into vote by mail, to our friends in Wisconsin. Indivisible Illinois was all in early, starting in 2018. We canvassed with the great women of Block, and been a good partnership since then. So I applaud the Wisconsin Democrats with the really transformational campaign that they're running throughout the whole state. My other hat is vote by mail, and I'm going to start off, Ben, with an article that you wrote. I don't know when it was. I don't think it was too long ago, but it was about 2016, how the Illinois voter registration clearinghouse database was hacked into. By law, I have to say all that. And no one knows. And that happened. That's actually what intrigued me, and started doing a lot of research starting in 2016, started an election security team, but everything changed. I'll keep it short because we don't have that much time. So with the pandemic, with COVID-19, we decided that the best route that we could follow is vote by mail. I know vote by mail is not perfect. You and I on your podcast have talked about vote by mail. I know there's a history of mail-in ballots in Chicago, but looking at all of the other alternatives, our best option right now is mail-in ballots online if possible. I took a look at 16, and I know LaSalle is only print. And also I think Lee County, Sarah, is another county that is also print. So I understand not all jurisdictions allow us to go online for our mail-in ballots, but whichever way you can get your mail-in ballot, I encourage you to do it now. Why? A lot of reasons. And some of the folks on this call have heard me say this many times, but we want to really make sure the polls are available for the people that have to use them. There are folks with non-English speaking skills. There are voters with disabilities. there are voters that just run into that last minute snag. So we want to make sure that the polls are open for them. And although I join everybody in being thrilled to see those long lines today, which is the first day of early voting, it does concern me a little bit because I, again, want to make sure that everyone has access. There's issues with our underserved communities sometimes. We've been doing a lot of voter education, and despite my promotion and my marketing skills, there are folks that do want to go to the polls, and I appreciate that. For those folks, I say make a plan. That's really the best thing that we can do. So make a plan. Hopefully your preference is mail-in ballot, but if not, do go early. Be prepared to wait in a long line if that's possible. And because I am a little bit of a worrier, I'm confident that we will have PPE at all 108 jurisdictions, but bring your own. Just be safe. And I want to say that there's a lot of actions folks can take. We have, because we are Indivisible Illinois, we are concentrating on underserved communities. So actually, I won't give you all the groups, but we have the Vote by Mail Task Force. I'm the lead of that, but we also have the Diversity Inclusion Group. We have been meeting with African-American and Latinx and Muslim community leaders, listening to them and what their needs are. So we have been trying to serve our underrepresented folks as much as possible. So as far as actions, let me try to cut to the chase here. There's a lot that you can do, but as far as one-stop shopping, I would recommend this really amazing website. So right before this Zoom call, I was on actually a WebEx, something a little different to keep things interesting. I was on a WebEx call with our friends, another Indivisible group called NWSOFA, shout out to them. And we were introducing our really outstanding website. It's a long name, but I think it's kind of easy to remember. It will be posted by my friend Kelly into the chat and Facebook. It's virusfreevotingillinois.org. So I encourage everybody to take a look at that. You will see right there, Lee County, you will see LaSalle. Why did we create this? Well, we wanted to make it as easy as possible for our voters to vote. And with all due respect to our friends at the Illinois State Board of Election, if you take a look at that site, it's a little bit challenging to get through. And our colleague, Jonathan Rogoff, who has a technical background, he stepped up. So free of charge, he has created a phenomenal website. And I encourage you, Ben, to have him on a podcast. He just did a great job for NWSOFA. So he's put all 108 jurisdictions onto this website. So wherever you live, you can tap right in. As he said, he sort of got rid of all of the fluff. You go right in, you request your mail-in ballot. Also very critical for a lot of jurisdictions are poll workers. We know that a lot of the poll workers that we have are in the at-risk category. I was proud to say on the hotline for Wisconsin in April, I learned a heck of a lot while I did that. And that's really informed my formation of this Vote by Mail Task Force in Illinois. So I learned that 7,000 election judges did not show up in Wisconsin. And I understand and appreciate that was 26 days after we got hit with COVID-19, but still, I am a little concerned. There's been a great recruitment push for high schoolers and college students, and that's great. But you will see on our website that you can do that too. You can sign up to become a poll worker. And there's a whole lot more. There's frequently asked questions. We are in the process of putting a voter guide on there because we find that young folks want a little support, especially young folks that haven't voted a lot. In Chicago, Ben, Lenny, Kelly, we know that we have about 110 judges to select from, and it's not easy. So essentially what we are trying to do on that website is make it as easy as possible. A couple more things and then I'll stop. I see we're at 8 o'clock. I want to do a shout out for our Twitter storm. So we have been using social media because everything that I'm telling you about has been informed by election officials. We have been talking to election officials since 2018 to find out what should be our marching orders. They are the trusted source. They are the folks that we should be going to. Also sources like Brennan Center, Verified Voting, Public Citizen, we're getting the information from the experts. And they've told us to not only get these mail-in ballots, but also to spread the word to our networks with social media. So we've been having Twitter storms. If you don't know what that is, we just kind of found out ourselves in May. We're using Twitter essentially to just to push the message out. And I think this is a rough estimate, but I don't think I'm too far off as far as impressions on Twitter. I think we're close to 10 million. Just last Wednesday, we concentrated on not only mail-in ballots, but fair tax, as well as census, and we made 3 million impressions. And there's Karen, my goodness. I could not do it without Karen Goldman. She is phenomenal. She provides Twitter training. It's definitely a team effort. So please, hopefully I can get the link on there fast enough for you, but we do have Twitter storms every Wednesday. We'll be doing this until November, maybe a little past November, as soon as all the votes are counted. And it's at noon, from noon until 2 o'clock. So please join us for that. The last thing that I'm going to pitch are our phone banks. And this is near and dear to my heart. There's a gentleman, very well-respected gentleman by the name of Chris Patterson. He belongs to an organization called the Institute for Nonviolence. Let's see if I can get all this right. And also he has joined with a larger group called Communities for Peace. I'm getting that wrong, but I'm trying to talk quickly. Essentially what Chris has done is outline 22 communities in Chicago. I'm talking about Roseland. Yes, that seems strange, but that's where I was born, Roseland Community Hospital. Also Englewood, also Back of the Yards. These are the communities that we too often ignore. So we have made close to, right, Nick, 2,000 calls so far. We've had 5 phone banks. We're going to have another 5. Our next one is Sunday at 4 o'clock. We really ask all of you to join us. And yes, we're doing it all right now. We're not forgetting about Wisconsin, goodness no. We actually have a phone bank for that every Wednesday at 10 o'clock. But also, we have to fight for these communities that have faced so much violence, that have faced economic inequality. As Chris told me, don't just come around now and forget about us after November. So we have to keep up the fight. And yes, it has to be participatory democracy. And we have to hopefully increase our numbers. So thanks for the opportunity to talk about all these opportunities that are out there for all of our volunteers.
All right, very good, Rose. They told me to keep it to an hour, and an hour it's been. Lenny, you want to close with any comments?
Yeah, I want to thank you, Ben, for moderating this whole hour. Thank you, Dani, for joining us from the 16th District. My mother-in-law is in Belvedere, so please fight for her. I also want to shout out to Anne. And before I do, thank you, Rose, for staying the course for the last how many years, and we have so much more to do. So I know that you're going to be with me, Karen, for tech stuff for this call, and also Kelly for bouncing things back and forth, Sarah for bringing yourself and your energy. Even before Indivisible, you were there for us. But I want to point out to Anne, I want to show you the t-shirt that I'm wearing. Maybe you will recognize it. Do you recognize this? This is from Bill. I went to NWSOFA's picnic, and this was one of the OFA shirts that they were giving away. So I thought you would enjoy it, Anne. I wore it for you. And these are all the issues that we have on the table right now. So thank you all for being here. I want to wish you a good night, and please do come back next Thursday. We're gonna have Mayor Lori Lightfoot on for the Grassroots City Budget Town Hall. Including some of those folks that Rose mentioned today. There's a lot to talk about then, so please stay tuned. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again next time.